So it's funny. So I had actually said to myself, I'm never going to do cocaine. Like I was like, I'm not going to do it. That's the one drug I'm not going to try. And then I was 19. So I was already a year into the bar and all my friends were doing it. And I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then it just was like, oh, everyone just looks like they're having so much fun. Like I'll just try it this one time. And then I actually loved it, which is like horrible. Like it's disgusting to say at the same time, but I did. I enjoyed it. I was like, wow, what is this? Like it was just a burst, right? But then what happens is it's called chasing the dragon, where you are always looking for that first zing, but like the more you do, you don't get that anymore. It changes within you how you receive the high. So like the first line is usually the best, where you get that zing, but then you keep doing more trying to get that thing, but you're just adding on to your high, and it can become like just not good. Like people get paranoid, or you don't go to bed. You just like, you're just layering on. And
Well, hello, everybody. And I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. Her name is Mandy Alexis. Mandy was a functional cocaine addict for 16 years and is now clean for 3.5 of those. Mandy started using weed for the first time at the age of 12. By 14 and 15, she was experimenting with mushrooms and acid. And by 16, ecstasy was added to the list of all those, including mixed in with alcohol. She has completely reinvented herself and is now a successful entrepreneur who recently moved to Nicaragua. Mandy wants to inspire and help motivate people to heal, grow, and live healthy and happy lives. She's a motivational speaker and a brand guru of Mandy Alexis Motivation and Marketing. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you for having me.
Or should I say hola?
Hola. Yes.
Nicaragua. That's right. So what was the biggest risk you ever took?
The biggest risk? I don't know. I guess that's a hard one. I'm not sure. I think maybe really going against the grain of what I had seen in my family, in the sense of like the healing journey, right? Like I didn't have I guess the influences around me showing me like that it could be done, and I took that risk and chance of being the one to do it and find the way, like, so like without having real guidance. I had support from my mom the entire way, but like will I be able to heal myself from all of the wounds? Will I be able to work through the traumas? Like, will I have the support from the people that I need it from? Because no one in my family has done this yet. Like, so yeah.
That is a big risk, taking it on almost by yourself. So I know this was a loaded question, and I said, I'm just going to go for it. Let's see what she says. But that brings us to your family. You started using drugs, and I also want to add this, and I'm probably going to add this in the intro of the podcast, is we have a big opioid crisis in the United States. And cocaine is not an opioid, but it ties in, at least in my mind, into that whole umbrella of addiction. And when I did a little bit of research, I found that starting to use drugs, which weed is one of them, is at age 12 is not uncommon. But where I want to start with this is you grew up, describe your family, because I know that there's families out there who say, I had no idea my kids were using drugs. So how did that start? And what was the role that your family played? So start wherever you want to start in this whole journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I can think about 12-year-old Mandy, I remember like thinking like, oh, I just want to try it. I want to see what it feels like. My friends had older siblings. They were doing it, so it really did feel in that moment, like an experimental thing, right? Like, oh, we're just going to experiment. Right. My father is an alcoholic. He had been in and out of my life for years. By the time I was being introduced to weed, he was more in my life and did have like a house that we would go to every once in a while. And he would let us smoke weed and like let us drink and stuff. Right. So it was like pretty normalized in the sense that it was okay to do it. Right. And so at that time, I really was like, oh, I'm experimenting. I want to see what this feels. I want to blah, blah, blah. But then as I began my healing journey and really looking into, well, why was I wanting to do all these things? Like, why was I wanting to experiment at such a young age? Why was I drinking at 14? And it feels to me that it was more of like of an escape, right? Like just trying to feel something different, trying to not deal with feelings that I may have been feeling with, right? Because you take these drugs and for the majority, well, for me, you're happy, right? Like, and you feel excitement and you feel like, ooh, like, just like out of this world type of thing, right? And so looking back, I can see, because based on the family that I did have with my dad, or the relationship with my dad and what he brought to the table with his alcoholism, and there was a lot of anger and verbal abuse, right? I could see that it was me trying to escape or try to deny what I was feeling and just like alter my reality.
That's a good point that you're mentioning, that there was stress in the family, your dad being the alcoholic. You're protecting yourself from his emotions when he's drunk. And I'm sure he had times where he was feeling just hunky-dory when he was not drunk and things were good. And as you're going through this, do you have any brothers, sisters?
Yes, I do. So I have a big family, but there's the main three of us that have the same mom and dad. And then I have quite a few siblings that my dad has given me from like different women. So, but it was mainly us three. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you started smoking weed and you're like, oh, this is great. I'm escaping this. And you were drinking at that age as well, correct?
Yeah. So alcohol started around 13, 14. So, yeah.
14. So this is when you started. Also, I'm looking back at our notes, is when you started experimenting with mushroom and acid. Now, for those of you peeps who don't know what the heck we're talking about, Mandy, can you tell them what weed is, what mushrooms are, and what acid is? Because not everybody is literate in the language of opioids or drugs.
Yeah, so weed, like marijuana, I think that's a pretty common word that people would understand that one. And then with like mushrooms, it's a psychedelic as well as acid. So those are like mind altering, where you can have like hallucinations. And you feel just like in an altered state, like very flyy and free and light. Acid's a little more stronger because it's a chemical, and mushrooms are organic, so they're a little less intense. And you can have variations of different highs depending on like how much you take and stuff. But yeah, so very much like an altering state with hallucinations and just feeling very, very in a new world, basically, is how I could describe it.
Yeah. Did you feel like you wanted something that was stronger, or was it just a natural progression of your curiosity?
Yeah, it was just basically like, well, what, I liked the way this feels. Like, what does this feel like? Right. And so then so ecstasy or MDMA was the one that was added last. And so that one, literally, it's ecstasy, like because of what it makes you feel. Right. But with that drug, there is a crazy down, right? Because you are boosting your serotonin like a lot with this drug, and you feel everything feels so good, but then you have a major crash and you feel very low. Alcohol does the same thing. Ecstasy is a little more intense in the sense of like the euphoric feeling that you get But yes, so, you get this boost, this like of ecstasy. That's why it's called that drug. And it felt great, like.
I remember the 80s, ecstasy was big. Ecstasy was like, you go out, you go on a date, and you definitely have some ecstasy. I remember that back in the 80s, that was like the drug back then. And now, when you think about your age, you have to get those drugs somehow. How did you get your hands on them? I mean, they're not bought, like now we can buy weed or marijuana as a medical treatment, but so weed is easy to come by. But what about the other drugs? You can't just go to the grocery store and say, hey, give me a couple of ecstasies or a few.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. Some of us had older siblings who had connections and would help us get it. And then we had this place where, like in Winnipeg, and it was called The Circle. And it was literally like drug dealers hung out there. And if you could just go there and find what you needed, right? So obviously that's dangerous in its own, because you don't know. I mean, you never really know what you're getting, but like you just, there's a bunch of mixed things out there that could be more harmful than, so, but, we had our ways. Either we could go right there and they had tons of people standing around and it was just a known thing if you knew that world. And like I mentioned, the older siblings who, for a fee, they were happy to supply us with drugs. So, yeah.
How do you get the money?
I think I was babysitting when I was younger, and that by the time I was 12, I was already babysitting. I had jobs, like I worked at the Tim Hortons, like across our street and stuff after school. So yeah.
So you're originally, and I forgot to mention that you're originally from Canada.
Yes. Yeah.
So this all happened back in the days in Canada. Now we're all back in Nicaragua.
Yes. Very different here.
It is. So when your parents, you haven't talked much about your mom, but when we talked about what is your mom's role? What did your parents, I have so many questions. What did your mom, now let me rephrase this.
Okay.
Did your dad stop you?
No.
Okay. Did your mom see this and said, wait a minute, there's something going on. I need to jump in. Where was she in all of this?
Yeah. So like when we did these things, we were in our dad's care, right? So like because they didn't live, they were separated, divorced when I was just a little thing. So we would go to my dad's and I would know I'd be able to party, right? And so he had a rule where he wouldn't buy us like the drugs or alcohol, but he said he's like, if you're doing it in the house, that's fine. And it was more around, his theory was, we're going to do it anyways. He'd rather us be in a safe space than wandering the streets. So that's controversial on its own. I know I've had this conversation, like, was that the right thing to do? Is the wrong thing to do? Should you blah, blah, you know what I mean? Like, but it is true. We would have done it anyway. So is it best for us to be inside a safe space in the house or wandering around the parks till 2 a.m? You know what I mean? So it's that, I don't know the right answer if that was the best situation or not, but so as experimental teenagers, you're going to find a way. Even the ones that aren't doing it necessarily to escape, but really just are wanting to experiment and aren't, like, they're going to find a way, right? We've all been there, I'm sure.
When I think about this, is like back in the days when I grew up in Germany, teenagers, no alcohol. And at some point I was alcohol curious. My dad always had a beer at dinner. And I'm like, what does it taste like? And he's like, well, here, try some. So you get to try stuff. And they're like, well, if you do drink any alcohol, in that case, then you do it at home. We're never served. I was like an Italian family. Like, here's your glass of wine with dinner. And but it was like, you can have some, but you don't get your own. That was always the deal. And I think that a lot of children in the US, particularly this is where I live, I don't know around the world if that is in other countries the same, is there's so many restrictions around the drugs and alcohol, which is great. But on the other hand, it also, the way we're dealing with this situation, oftentimes it's forbidden, it's bad, we're punished, we're, like
Mm.
you had your dad who said, okay, as long as you do it at home, we're cool, which I tend to go with. This is more like what I would agree with, but I
Mhm.
know a lot of people listening to that saying, Heike, you're out of your freaking mind.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we were going to do it no matter what. And honestly, like it made sense to have a safe space to be in. At least we weren't, going to get in trouble with outside forces, right?
Yep.
Like he never bought it for us though. He is like, he refused to do that. He was like, nope, like I won't partake in like getting you it. But if you find it, yeah, like, which he knew, like he remembered being a teenager too. Right. So yeah, so that was how it went.
So how did it affect your schooling?
It didn't actually. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm very intelligent. I never, my grades were always A's, A pluses. I didn't even need to go to class all the time because I caught on to things quite quickly. I actually graduated with honors. For grade 12, I was so advanced that school became boring. So I actually dropped out and did it correspondence so that I could just get it done. And yeah, so graduated with honors, like, it didn't affect me at all.
Because, as a parent, you would look for like signs and symptoms and things like that.
Right.
Now,
and that's what I mean, functioning in my life. Like, I looked on the outside that like you would never know, right? Even throughout my 16 years, like I was volunteering. I had a business. I was going to school. I was taking like different courses, like all behind the scenes. I'm like this party girl, like, so there was no signs in the sense of like, I can't pay my bills. Like she's failing out of this, like she lost another job, like none of that. Right. So it very much was like functioning. But that's still like the drug is destroying my brain and like everything. Right. And it just took many years for me to clue into how much it was affecting me in my outside world, even though it looked like I was succeeding. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that brings us to our overall topic, which is cocaine. What is cocaine and how can somebody use it, or how is it available? So for people, again, I'm going back to people that may know somebody, have heard about it, or don't know anything about it, so they have an idea too of what to do with today's episode.
Yeah, so cocaine is a upper, it keeps you awake and alert. Most people, like, you snort it. Some people have like put it in cigarettes or rolled it with weed, and they call that like Cocoa Puffs. So you can like smoke it that way as well. But the main way is snorting it. And so, yeah. And, sometimes, sometimes I do it so often, do it so much, that I would be up for days, but still being able to like go to work and things like that. And I know some of my friends too, like you wouldn't notice that they were like doing it. So it wasn't until like later in life that it became like this really big problem for me anyways. Like it's always a problem. We shouldn't be doing cocaine. But yeah.
I'm sure lots of listeners have seen shows where cocaine became like the drug to keep working, to stay awake, to bust out overnighters while snorting cocaine, partying all night.
Keep studying, right? Like it's because it keeps you alert and keeps you awake, but it's also eating your brain. So that is something, they don't show on TV that like that is happening. But yes, like it has that appeal because you can keep going, right? And it does. It makes you feel good, right? You're like, right? But it's destroying you, like for sure. Yeah.
It's a chemical drug. So it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? There was a show, not amphetamine. Can't think about it, but there's a very popular show where they cooked up their own drug.
Oh, Breaking Bad.
Bad.
They made crystal meth, but yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I was like, I know a lot of people have probably seen that. I was like, just picture this, what happened to the people in that show when they took that drug over a long period of time. It's like
Mhm.
you can't think and you can't function and you become addicted, which is the key to all these drugs as we go down. I mean, weed is not in itself addictive, but as you keep going, you think it's almost like harder, stronger drugs,
Mhm.
or drugs that give me better fulfillment.
I think people can get addicted to weed though, because they learn they do it so much that like that's who they are now, right? Like,
True.
and they definitely can get anxieties and like feel off if they're not smoking it, like they were, let's say, right? And I also do know like that addiction like is different for everyone, right? Like people have an addiction gene in them, and there's someone who could like smoke weed like for 6 months and then just be done and be fine. But another person could smoke it for 6 months and try to quit and be very challenging, right? So it's also different per person, like on how they're affected by addiction based on all the things, so
True, very true. The chemicals
mhm.
that are going on in your own brain, too, in your own body.
Yeah.
Now, was there a catalyst that made you want to try Coke?
So it's funny. So I had actually said to myself, I'm never going to do cocaine. Like I was like, I'm not going to do it. That's the one drug I'm not going to try. And then I was 19. So I was already a year into the bar and all my friends were doing it. And I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then it just was like, oh, everyone just looks like they're having so much fun. Like I'll just try it this one time. And then I actually loved it, which is like horrible. Like it's disgusting to say at the same time, but I did. I enjoyed it. I was like, wow, what is this? Like it was just a burst, right?
Mhm.
But then what happens is it's called chasing the dragon, where you are always looking for that first zing, but like the more you do, you don't get that anymore. It changes within you how you receive the high. So like the first line is usually the best, where you get that zing, but then you keep doing more trying to get that thing, but you're just adding on to your high, and it can become like just not good. Like people get paranoid, or you don't go to bed. You just like, you're just, yeah, layering on. And they call it chasing the dragon because you're trying to chase this initial high that you got from that very first line. So
Mhm.
it can become very, very dangerous.
Yep, yep. And then again, it leads to potentially stronger drugs that give you a quicker high, like heroin or other things like that.
Yeah.
So when you think about that time and you said, man, I really loved it, this was great. What else was going on? Was there a relationship? Were you in a relationship? I mean, you're 19 at this point, and there must have
Mhm.
been some boyfriends or girlfriends or
Yeah, I had relationships, and basically it was just, first, like we're out of school, working full time as a server, the whole like nightlife thing, right? Like, and I was making tons of money, and then it was just like it just became the lifestyle where like we'd go to work and we'd have a couple drinks at work, and then we'd go to the bar, and then you'd find an after party, and then we'd all like fall asleep, then we wake up, we shower, we do it again. Like it was just like it just became the lifestyle, and it just I was always like, oh, this is just for a bit, like, and then it wasn't just for a bit. And like I said, because I was still like progressing, like in society standards, let's say, like I was like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. And then basically, like it just hit me that like, because I was having horrible relationships with men, obviously like feeling shitty at work. Like I could still get my work done and no one would know and whatever, but like I felt it, right? And then also who I was being as a friend, where like I would cancel because I was like too strung out, or like, things like that. And it was like I didn't like what was happening, like what I was attracting based on who I was, and who I was becoming based on what I was doing. right? So I was like, this needs to stop if I'm ever going to have those relationships and that life, and then me being able to actually feel good with like, right? Like, cause I would be home by myself and I would get a bag just because I didn't want to feel how I was feeling without it. Right. Like, so yeah.
Now, what was the catalyst that got you to the point where you said, enough, I want to change my life. I want to quit now?
Yeah. So there was a couple different stages. So the first one was I had just got out of like, a really bad relationship. And that was like, okay, if I'm going to attract like the kind of love I want, then I'm going to stop. So that's when I really started really working on quitting. And then, so I had some things happen. I would go like a few months and then like I would cave in or whatever. So then actually I started dating another guy. And then the way he loved me, like it was like, he was so patient with my journey and like all the changes that was happening within me. And I was like, yes, like I want to be better. Like I had already decided I want to be better for me, but then it was like, I want to be better for him. And then he actually had a son. And it was like, that was the moment where it really was like, okay, if me and him are going to be together, is this the type of stepmother I want to be? And it was like, absolutely not, in no form whatsoever. So as soon as those two pieces clicked, it was like, I was done. I didn't touch it again because I was just like, just coming from having an alcoholic father and knowing what that felt like and how that can be traumatizing and what that meant for the relationship between the parents or the adults and like everything. I was like, I do not want this for his child or for him or for me or for my future children that I may be having like with him. So that was it. That was the factor, the child, which is so me and him aren't together anymore, but I truly believe that they serve their purpose and for me to be able to continue down this path. So
That is a good catalyst to think about yourself as a role model. Is this who I want to be based on what your dad was a role model? And you're looking back and I think as you get older, you also become more clarity and more power to take those steps and make your own decisions where nobody can tell you, no, Mandy, this is not what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do this. And you're like, no, I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
When you said, at one point you said, oh, I can't quit. I need to keep going. And then you met this guy and the kids and you're like, okay, did you quit cold turkey? If so, what was that like? Or was there a process to it? And what was the process?
Yeah. So it was quite interesting how the universe really just lines stuff up for me, this divine timing thing. It's beautiful. So I had been in Calgary, actually. So I'm from Manitoba and I was in Alberta. And that is when I was like, nope, I'm done. And my last time was there. I did it there. I was done. That's when the whole kids thing clicked in and stuff, whatever. Right. And then it just so happened that I had planned a trip for Costa Rica 2 weeks later. So I was leaving my familiar settings and I left. I went for the whole summer. So I was gone for July and August. And that gave me my push because I was out of my environment. I was doing new things, making new friends. And like I completely changed what like my whole like scenario of like where I was. And like I said, divine timing, because I didn't plan that. And so, but the universe helped me and gave me that lined up like that so that I would be able to really focus on the big chunk, the first beginning where it was going to be my most challenging by just getting me out of there. So that really skyrocketed my my healing and like stepping away from that life. So when I returned, I was like, it was wild because I was so different, but everything was still so the same there, right? So yeah, a lot of continuous changes. I had to find a new place to live. And then even just like realizing who my friends actually were and like, what did Mandy actually like to do for fun? Because everything surrounded drinking and drugs. Like, we go bowling. Eventually we'd be doing cocaine in the bathroom, like, like any kind of work function, like everything, right? Everything could lead up to that. So I had to discover who I was in my mid 30s. Like, what do I like to do? Because all I knew I liked to do was party, like, so there was a lot to figure out about myself, but it's been fun.
This is true. What are the withdrawal symptoms?
Okay. So yeah,
Other
I
than
felt,
really wanting it.
well, yeah, like I felt really weird. I don't know, like I felt like there was times where my brain felt like it was on fire. Because your brain will rebuild itself. So it did. It felt like it was on fire. I felt like very agitated, obviously, very moody. I like for me too, like, so like I also discovered how sensitive I am to energies. And so like it was very intense for me in a sense, because if I think about it, since I was 12, I've been numbing myself, like not continuously, but for big chunks of time. And so for like discovering that I feel stuff, like a lot of stuff. Like, so that was very wild and challenging and a lot of confusion for me and stuff. I was very, very like lucky in the sense that I had my best friend was like so supportive and didn't turn her back on me for me being like wacky. Cause like, I didn't know what was going on sometimes. Right. Because it just was so much. And then my mom was super supportive. And then the guy that I was with was super supportive and stuff. So obviously love is a huge help when it comes to healing anything and letting go of any kind of addiction and having that unconditional love where they see that like, the transitional part isn't so pretty, right? Because it's not. And it was painful in many ways, like physically, emotionally, mentally, right? Like, but I wanted it and I knew it was going to be better once I got through this. So I fought through and just discovered different modalities to help ease pains, like meditation, learning about the addiction. I learned about it. I wanted to know what was happening to me. Taking time to do meditations. I started working out more regularly. And, just learning about the body and the brain and stuff, like just keeping myself very focused on getting like understanding what was happening to me and things. So yeah.
I like that because I find it, or I can imagine it difficult. You go into Costa Rica and you're finally free of that tempting environment, let's call it that way. And then you come back and realizing that everything is still the same and how to deal with those continuous temptations, where to get the drugs, what to do. And finding a way around or maybe through this whole mess so you can live a healthier life that is you now, not the drugs in you, it's you and your ideas and all your help. So how important is this to set boundaries for you?
Oh, it was very important. Like that was basically like pretty much the first thing I had to do when I got back was tell people like do not like bring out drugs in front of me. Like if you want to go party and you want to go drink, like go do that. But if you want to see me, like let's go for a walk, let's go for ice cream. Like I actually had to like set firm boundaries in the sense of like what I did with my time too. Like I didn't go to any concerts. I didn't go to, any late night thing. Like I was just like anything that would be nighttime related that could possibly like, tempt me, I guess. And then I was very firm with friends and I just said like, and then, yeah, like the reason I had to change homes was because my roommate still wanted to party. And I gave her the opportunity and just said like, if you want this journey still, that's your journey. I'm not judging, but just so you know that if this is continuous, then I need to find somewhere else to live. And she just wasn't ready to join me. So that's fine. And so, but I had to live in that environment for a bit. And it was like, well, I found a new place. So that was a challenge, just in the sense of like the energetic differences that we had, right? Like she never did it in front of me, but I could tell when she was on it, or like I could tell when the next day if she was strung out, right? So it was just like, there was that. But I did have friends who were like, yeah, I hear ya. And they would just call me up and we literally just jump in the car and go for an ice cream. And that would be our outing. And like, I also was just very focused on me. So I spent a lot of time alone, to be honest. Like,
and that brings me to the next question is like, why do you think it's important, especially in that journey, that you know yourself?
So you have to get to know yourself, right? So but that is important because you are with you 100% of the time, right? Like you are living with yourself. So for you to love yourself and honor yourself and know yourself is the most important, because then you'll be able to know what you can ask from your friends and your family and the universe, right? And set those healthy boundaries and know what you want out of your life and the people who you're going to bring into your life, right?
Yeah, it's true. You attract who you are.
Exactly. Yeah, right? Exactly. I strongly am into the law of attraction. So yeah.
Now I want to dip into your entrepreneurship. You in 2011, you opened Sophie's Dognasium. That was your first entrepreneur step. Lead us from Sophie's to where you are now, because you've become very successful in what you do. And I want to share that too as part of your story.
Yeah. So yeah, when I was younger, I opened Sophie's Dognasium, and that was cool and like wild and super fun. And then after that, I went back to school and did like a an event management course. And then from that, I actually went back to serving as I was like trying to decide what to do next. And then I met someone and she brought me into the promotional branding world. And I wasn't sure about it because it was this office job, and I'm just like, that doesn't sound like that's for me, like being at a desk from 9 to 5, like, I don't know. But then she was like, once you build your clients, like you'll have more freedom. And I was like, ooh, freedom. I like that word. Right. So I stuck with it and I like continued to grow. And then like me and her had left and opened our own company together for a bit. Like, well, it was her company and I helped build it, I should say. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I feel like I want more freedom. I feel like I could step away from like the office in general and like work from home or like go on these mini trips. And so, while we were still partnered up, I did start leaving and going to Costa Rica, like I set it up so I could do everything online and leave for a couple of months. So I did that for a couple of years. And then when COVID hit, things sort of shifted for everyone. So I decided to go independent. I did team up with a decorator that who was also a friend, but now I have Mandy Alexis Marketing, which I've like fully created where I can be away, right? So before I kept on having to go back and like check in and all this kind of stuff. And I will as upsetting and challenging and hard COVID was, like it did give me the opportunity and my clients to see that we don't need to be in the same place, and so, I'm very disciplined and very organized. I have been taking master classes and I'm constantly learning and trying new ways to be better at entrepreneurship, life, everything. Right. And so now I've created this business online where it allows me to basically be wherever I want in the world. So I'm in Nicaragua right now. I was in Costa Rica before this. And then being here, I actually was offered an opportunity to help run a resort. So I live on a resort for free while I'm still able to do my business. And so while I'm hanging out here, I'm living on a resort. I've manifested this beautiful life for myself here. So I'll do this for however many. I'm definitely not going back to Canada while it's winter. So, so I'll definitely be here for at least another 6-7 months. Just enjoying living. Like I'm super close to the beach, and yeah, like I'm proud of the healing that I did that has allowed for me to become a better co-creator with the universe and get the things that I truly desire, right? Like, and it all started from the healing. And then, yes, so now I've created this lifestyle for myself that works for me. Like freedom to me is like so important. And that means that I can come and go as I please to countries and places. Like, yeah.
Mhm. What about the company? I found this just the other day. Just Be Epic. Is that still?
Yeah. So Just Be Epic is like my tagline. So I also have Mandy, Alexis Motivation. And what that is I have taken beautiful photos, mainly in Costa Rica, and I've created motivational art. So each photo will have like an inspirational saying or a motivational saying that like matches the photo. And then I've created an online store where you can purchase them as canvases. You can buy water bottle mugs, throw pillows, journals, like all with this beautiful art that I have. Like, so pictures are mine, words are mine. So the Just Be Epic is just like my tagline. So just in general, right? So yeah, so that's I use that in my marketing and in my motivational. So yeah, I have that going for me as well. So
That is great. I love that. I'm like, this is so much goodness coming out of a pretty messy time of your life and feeling healthy and strong and living on a resort. Oh, who doesn't want to do that? And do a little bit of work, but get a beautiful place to live. I think that's awesome. I'm so proud of you. And I know that you're proud of yourself for what you've accomplished emotionally, physically, and in your business.
Yes, I'm very proud of myself. Yeah.
So what do you want to achieve by sharing your story, Mandy?
I want people to know that no matter how long they've been one way, they can change. So it doesn't mean an addiction. It could mean that stuck in a job, in a relationship, in a mindset, right? We are so powerful that we can change whatever it is that we want to change it that isn't aligned with how we truly want to feel or truly want to be living. We can do it. And it just takes small steps. It will not happen overnight. Trust me. I've been working on myself for years. Still not done. I don't think I'll ever be done, but I want people to know that it is possible. And the first thing they need to do is just believe in themselves and just do the work. Right. And also want to just note that for people who are looking for ways to start their journey, like, we have so much free resources to be able to dabble and figure out what it is, modalities that work for them. I actually highly recommend Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about the conditioning of the mind and how to rewire your thinking. And I feel that like, that's where it all starts, right? Like what stories are we telling ourselves? What programming do we have? And if we can understand that we can change that and then have the tool to change that, it makes the big difference, right? So starting with the mindset of knowing that we can change, how to change, and then doing the deep healing, like, like one step at a time.
Very true. Can't do it all in one haul. It takes time.
No.
And it's also, as you peel back those layers like an onion, you may discover things that you didn't know about yourself. And
yeah, healing happens in layers. You said it perfectly, like an onion. It happens in layers. So yeah. And I just want people to know that they can feel lighter and happier and freer. Like I was so heavy and I was so stuck, and like, even though I was happy, like I was having good times and like whatever, but how I feel now, it's just like, it's night and day. Even though if someone were to look at Mandy then, they would still be like, oh yeah, Mandy was happy. Mandy was having fun, and sure, all those things, but I wasn't dealing with any of my childhood traumas or any of the shit that was piling on throughout the years, right? And if we don't deal with the stuff, where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere, it stays. So then imagine just pile on, pile on, pile on. But piece by piece, you can let that go and just feel lighter and freer and have more connection with yourself and others.
Yeah, so true. So Mandy, how can people reach and connect with you?
So yeah, they could reach me through either Facebook or Instagram. So it's just at Mandy Alexis Motivation, and I'm happy to have conversations or chat. If they want to check out the motivational pieces, it's mandyalexismotivation.ca. So
great. So I hope, guys, that you enjoyed my conversation today with Mandy and learned something to think about, something that may be helpful, that you can share our episode with somebody else who may need that help, or may need that, have that conversation with somebody that they love, that Mandy and I had and Mandy was dealing with. So please reach out to us on social media. Don't just listen to the episode and say nothing and say, whoa, these two women are awesome and we love Mandy. We want to hear from you. So reach out to us once the episode airs. Mandy will tag you, and I will tag everybody on social media. You can find me at heikeyates.com. Also on all social media, Heike Yates, or Heike Yates Pursue Your Spark. So with that, I hope to hear from you. I want to say thank you to Mandy. It was so amazing to share a story that is not easily shared.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the platform to hopefully inspire others. So
thank you. So with that, we're out of here. Ciao.
Bye.